Welcome to Warhammer 40k lore in the Bible, where I pull from Warhammer 40k lore to help explain biblical lore. And today we're going over penal worlds. I also do a short version of these, that's more of a narrative experience. And then I also do react videos as well to Warhammer 40k lore, and with a biblical veneer to it. But the way these work here is we get into the Warhammer 40k lore first to set the stage, then we get into the biblical side of things. And then after that, we round back to Warhammer 40k lore at the end, if it warrants it. But anyways, let's get this started. A penal world is a class of imperial world that functions as a military prison planet. A single such world's population consists entirely of criminals drawn from hundreds of different worlds. This type of world tends to be a barren, barely habitable planet that has few or other uses and has little, if any, indigenous population. Military formations are often raised from amongst the prison population as necessary to serve as penal legion troops within Astra Militarum regiments. There, they might earn redemption in the eyes of the Emperor through their term of service, which is for life. Okay. Life on a penal world. A penal world is a planet used to exile prisoners. Within the Calixis sector, inmates sentenced to penal worlds are marked with barcode tattoo that is typically placed on their neck, forehead, or other easily spotted area of the body. Here, many inmates die of disease, starvation, infection, the environment, an escape attempt, an encounter with brutal enforcer guards, or one of the 100 other maladies. Inmates are sentenced far away from their home worlds, and most never seen the world again. By the way, guys, take the wikis with a grain of salt, okay? So, anyways, inmates condemned to a penal world are those found guilty of crimes that don't warrant outright execution. Some feel that those who are executed are the lucky ones. For those sentenced to penal worlds are sent to hellish places where death is slow in coming. The only denizens that have any real freedoms whatsoever are the warden and his guards. On many penal worlds, the planetary governor is also the global prisoner's warden, and his authority is absolute. The warden and his guards often brutalize the inmate population, adding to their considerable misery and mortality. The populace tends to be hardened, ruthless, shifty, and untrustworthy. However, they can also be resourceful and possess a low cunning, or an orc low cunning. Anyways, they are haunted individuals who are witness to the kind of atrocity most will never see. Life on many penal colonies is extremely regimented and heavily monitored. Daily menial labor, or maintaining the grounds, or more rarely, mining or extracting resources, is designed to tax even the hardiest individuals' energy levels, thereby reducing the incidence of violent encounters. Food is largely bland and heavily processed to inhibit muscle growth and dull the senses. Yay. Constant lockdown when not working or eating all but eliminates the ability to hope for a better day. That's an understatement. These calculated practices break the wills of inmates, but even with all that working against them, human nature knows no limit to its baser instincts. When the demand of expendable soldiers is highest, Lord Generals send word back along the worlds they have conquered and request additional troops from all planets capable of sending them. Penal colonies are often able to send viable troops who seek little more than final taste of freedom and redemption in the service to the Golden Throne. Founding ties for war efforts are rare on these planets, for such penal legions are difficult to control. But the flood of inmate volunteers continually feeds the insatiable, unsending imperial war machine on fronts across the galaxy. While these represent the majority of these colonies, others are so far removed from the rest of the Imperium that they are merely dumping grounds for what the sector or subsector governments consider a human refuse. On these worlds, transport fleets often arrive in the system, festooned with one-way drop pods filled with convicts, Once in the orbit, they fire off all the pods and then depart for a hasty transition back to the warp, leaving the accused to fend for themselves. On some of these worlds, a single established bastion provides updates or provides the basis for rounding up and honoring a founding tithe. In others, those who survive from their own tribal groupings and struggle to exist within the remains of their pods and any gear they were given. Those hailing from the penal colony fall mostly onto one of two camps, either inmates or their progeny. Few others come from the ranks of guards, gaolers, and wardens who oversee these wretches. Okay. Regardless of which group they fall into, those living on a penal colony develop survival strategies to inure themselves to the horrors around them. Many prisoners band together in gangs to provide support, protection, and strength. Some rely on intimidation or reputation to keep potential threats at bay. Those unable to cope find their way to their graves, or end up more deeply imprisoned by servitude to the fellow inmates. The few able to survive and emerge from the environment stronger and more defined are often the kind needed by both inquisitors and the Imperial Guard. Individuals who have skills and talent outside the norm are often noticed by those with a keen eye for such abilities. Wardens are tasked with readying prisoner recruits for duty in penal legions as required. At times, an inquisitor might seek out those with the capacity to move in the world of shadows and depravity, and there are few better places to find those with the resolve and ability than in a prison. Yeah, that is true. Working for an inquisitor brings significantly more freedom, but infinitely more danger than even the highly terminal nature of their service in the Imperial Guard. Still, very few reject an offer made by someone who can make a warden cower. Nice. Anyways, penal colonies hold all kinds of criminals, and therefore are also kinds of hidden talents. While most doomed to such a world are rough thugs or insane killers, some inmates are gifted thinkers, skilled procurers, rousing orators, and budding technomats who were captured and incarcerated for activities that local rulers deemed heretical, or revolutionary, or simply bothersome. Once imprisoned with others of their ilk, they might hone their skills or develop new ones. If ever unleashed upon the Imperium, most are eager to share the new abilities with unsuspecting enemies on the direction of their inquisitorial masters. Now we're getting into the biblical side of things here. We're going to be talking about this prison house called the bottomless pit, or the abyss, or abyssos in Greek, right? Tartarus, stuff like that. But anyways, this is where the worst of the worst go. Revelation 9:2, and he opened up the bottomless pit, and there arose smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by the reason of the smoke of the pit. And we're going to see why smoke and stuff comes up out of this pit. But this is where the worst of the worst go. And then we see the locusts here, right? And there came up smoke, out of the smoke, locust upon the earth. And until it was given power, as scorpions of the earth have power, and he commanded them not to hurt grass, neither any green thing. Anyways, you get the gist. And these are the product of Genesis 6, right? We're going to see the angels who did this are going to be put in chains and all that and go into the abyss, or the bottomless pit. But anyways, that's Genesis 6. So the sons of God came down, mated with women, created giants. It's in Genesis 6. Also, Joshua 4 says that they taught, men, humans, to make one species with the other, or to mix one species with the other, which I guess is the same thing. Anyways, Jude 1:6. And the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day. Okay, here's a description of this place. First Enoch chapter 54. And I looked and turned to another part of the earth, and saw there a deep valley with burning fire. So that's why There's smoke and stuff coming up out of the pit. And they brought the kings and the mighty, and began to cast them into this deep valley. And there mine eyes saw how they made these their instruments, iron chains of immeasurable weight. And I asked the angel of peace who went with me, saying, For whom are these chains being prepared? And he said unto me, These are being prepared for the hosts of Azazel. And we're going to talk about Azazel when we talk about Slanesh next week. Very interesting stuff. But okay, so that they may take them and cast them into the abyss of complete condemnation. And they shall cover their jaws with rough stones, as the Lord of spirits commanded. All right. So right here, in the King James Version, the abyss is typically translated as the bottomless pit, a place of confinement for spirits, demons, and Satan, appearing mostly in Revelation. It represents a deep, murky pit or shaft. The Greek word abyssos, from which we get the abyss, appears 9 times in the New Testament, with the KJV translating it as bottomless pit, deep or bottomless. Okay. I also want to get into Tartarus. So in the King James Version, KJV, Tartarus appears only once in 2 Peter 2:4, where the Greek verb tartaru is translated as cast down to hell. It refers specifically to a deep, dark abyss or prison where fallen angels are confined, chained in darkness, and kept for judgment. Okay. There we go. Now we're going to see Lucifer is put into the abyss or the bottomless pit. So verse 12, How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which did weakest the nations? And this is another notch of Lucifer not being Satan, because Lucifer was put down into the pit then, but Satan wasn't. He was still on the earth, wasn't he? So Lucifer is not Satan, guys. Okay, for thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God, and I will sit also upon the mount of congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Who does that sound like to you guys? Sounds like the beast of Revelation, doesn't it? Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. And right here, they that see thee shall never look upon thee, and consider thee, saying, Is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake the kingdoms? He's a product of Genesis 6 as well, right? That these angels came down, mated with women, and created these giants, right? He's one of them. And I believe he's the beast of Revelation. Just check this out. Revelation 11:7. And when they shall have finished their testimony, the beast that thou ascendeth out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them, and shall overcome them and kill them. In my opinion, Lucifer is the beast of Revelation. So real quick. Now we have Jesus preaching to these spirits here. We'll start in verse 18. For Christ also hath once suffered for sins, the just for the unjust, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh, but quickened by the Spirit, by which also he went and preached unto the spirits in prison, which sometime were disobedient, when once the longsuffering of God waited in the days of Noah, while the ark was being prepared, wherein few, that is, 8 souls, were saved by water. So, this is that Genesis 6 scenario, and Jesus is going down into the prison house and proclaiming victory over them. He's not preaching to them. He's claiming victory over them, because Genesis 3:15 talks about how that God will put enmity between the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman, and he will bruise his head, or smash his head, and the serpent will bruise his heel. Right? So Satan was trying to get rid of Jesus, right? By polluting the blood of humans and stuff like that. So Jesus went down and proclaimed victory over them. And notice it says spirits in prison. Okay. Oops. Now, we see Satan is put in a prison, right? So, and I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years. Now, there's people that believe that Jesus cast him into the pit when Jesus was on the earth. There's very much evidence for that. And then there's also belief in the millennial kingdom and Satan will be put into prison. It makes, I don't know. But anyways, so that's the two things there. But anyways, and cast him into the bottomless pit and shut him up and set a seal upon him that he should deceive the nations no more. To the 1,000 years should be fulfilled, and after that he must be loosed a little season. So Satan's going to be put into the prison house, right? But not when Lucifer was put in, right? So Lucifer's not Satan again, right? And then we're going to go into all these verses that talk about it, right? So Jeremiah 48:28, you inhabitants of Moab, leave the cities and dwell on the rock, and be like the dove that makes her nest over the mouth of the abyss. No. Okay. Luke 8:31. This is where he's talking about the legion stuff, right? So when Jesus asked him, saying, what is thy name? And he said, Legion, because many devils were entered into him. And they besought him that he would not command them to go into the deep, or the abyss. Right here. Abyssos. So, yeah, and there was there a herd of many swine feeding on the mountain, and they besought him they would suffer them to enter into them. And he suffered them. Then went the devils out of the man and entered into the swine, and the herd ran violently down a steep place into the lake, and were choked. And when they fed them saw that, when they that fed them saw what was done, they fled and went and told the city and in the country. Isn't it interesting? We'll get into the water spirits and all that, and when I talk about the dark kraken. But isn't it interesting? They go into the water. But anyways, I digress. So there's the prison house, guys. I mean, there's many verses that talk about it, right? So let's go, Revelation, cast me to the abyss, shut it and sealed it for him. That we read that one already. Oh, yes. Here's the chain stuff too. Let me find it. Revelation 20, verse 1. And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. There's that chain, right, that we saw here. There were instruments and iron chains of immeasurable weight. So, very interesting stuff. So that's the prison house, guys, where the worst of the worst goes, and Satan and Lucifer, and let's bring up that one. Let me find it real quick. This one. The Abaddon's there, right? Right. Bottomless pit. Revelation 9:11. They had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon, the destroyer, which is the Assyrian. But anyways, guys, this is going a little bit too long, and there's no reason to go back to the penal world stuff. You guys pretty much got it all, So I want to thank everybody who liked the video. If you disliked the video, thank you for at least giving me a chance. Also, I want to promote my memberships. I am thinking of videos to do. I'm not going to put this content behind a paywall, but I will think of something extra for that to give you guys your money's worth. And it's only $5. And you'll be helping out the channel, and you have access to my Discord. And I will be making a free portion of that Discord so everybody can come into it. But I'm in the workings of that. I mean, I've had it for a while, but I want to work on it a little bit more. But you guys will be able to ask me questions, and we could play games, stuff like that, right? But anyways, guys, you have a wonderful day.